we'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. So we're mindful of the time. Not at the moment, I'm not using a tablet, but my phone. Yeah. Sure. Of course. Mike. Okay, we'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. I'd like to entertain a motion we accept the minutes of the last meeting. So moved. Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. I just have it. We do have one item that's up for a public hearing today. The procedures are that we will ask anyone here that wishes to speak before council, planning committee, to be sworn in by a representative of our law department at the public hearing this afternoon. So we have a representative from our law department. If you wish to speak before the committee, please be sworn in at this moment.
Please, anybody who wishes to speak, please rise, raise your right hand, and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth? I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. So the procedures are going to be that we will open up the public hearing, ask anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the conditional use request and or in this case the historic designation. Ask anyone who wishes to speak in favor, and then ask for anyone who wishes to speak against, and then we'll open it up for a public hearing, and after the public hearing we'll open it for questions, and after that point we will not do anything with the legislation. However, this evening at 7 o'clock we'll invite you back, and you're more than welcome to speak again. We'll repeat the procedure once again, and after that public hearing at 7 o'clock tonight, we will then have a recommendation from this committee, the Planning Committee, to all of City Council, and either to approve, disapprove, or table, take time on an item. And so those are basically the procedures. And before the public hearing, we will now receive a report from our planning department. So the first item that's up for a public hearing today is the ordinance approving the historic designation of 105 Fir Hill as a historic landmark.
Good afternoon, members of Planning Committee. The Paul Martin Center, the University Club, was constructed in 1917 in the Georgian Revival style at 105 Fir Hill and is located on the University of Akron campus. The construction of the building was commissioned in 1917 under the leadership of University Club President Charles W. Seiberling, Vice President of Goodyear Tire and Rubber. The structure is the work of the Akron architectural firm Harpster and Bliss. Alterations and additions to the original layout do not significantly impact the building's historic integrity. The building is in good condition and remains in its historic location. The building's architecture retains the historic feeling and association as noted in historic images. In reviewing the application, the Department of Planning and Urban Development staff has determined the building meets the criteria for designation of a historic landmark. This designation makes the property eligible to receive historic tax credits to facilitate rehabilitation. The Urban Design Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the designation on March 5th. Planning Commission reviewed the application on March 15th and recommend approval. Planning staff recommends approval of a historic designation of the Paul Martin Center located at 105 Fir Hill.
Thank you, sir. So at this point, we'll open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the historic designation of 105 Fir Hill. Can you please step forward and provide for the committee your name and address?
Good afternoon. My name is Wendy Naylor. My address is 92 East Washington Street, Chagrin Falls. I am a partner in the firm of Naylor and Wellman, who is the historic consultant for the University Club. We would like to thank the administration for their support on pushing through the landmark designation process. We are trying to meet a Ohio Historic Preservation Tax Credit application deadline of April 1st. Tom Chema and Scott Jacobs are also here today representing the developers of the project. In short, there's been an article in the paper that the planned rehabilitation is for reuse of the building as a boutique hotel. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the proposed historic designation at 105 Fir Hill? Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone? Okay. Anyone wishing to speak against the historic designation? Anyone against? Anyone? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and now open up to any committee members at this time that has any questions or comments. Ms. Amovian.
I'm just curious, do we talk about the historic designation first before we start talking about future use? We have to approve that first, is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think what brought this before council is the fact that there's the interest in rehabbing the structure and the historic tax credits, but often we get applications for local landmark status that would be independent of a development project. So really what's before you is it a historic structure worthy of acknowledgement by council, and we definitely believe that it is.
And so we do that first, or do we do them together? I don't know what.
I mean, really in this case is just for council to take action on making it a local historic landmark.
Which means that you can't do anything to the exterior, pretty much you have to leave it intact.
Yeah, the developer could probably speak to this more fully, but with historic tax credits, there are certain criteria they have to meet in terms of keeping the architectural integrity. Kurt might have more to add too.
Yeah, well, I mean, the landmark designation makes sure that they come to the city if they're going to do anything to alter the exterior appearance. When historic tax credits are in use, we don't have to worry about that too much because then they're working through the state to attain those same goals.
I see. Thank you very much.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Neal.
Just a general one, with, if this comes to fruition, where would that put us as far as needed hotel space?
I'll just give you my opinion, but my opinion is that we could use a lot more hotel rooms in the city of Akron. So it's true that there are lots of hotel room availability in terms of throughout Summit County, but I think for people who want to stay here in the core of Akron, there still are really just two options, the Courtyard and the Hilton Garden Inn. So I think a city our size could accommodate a lot more hotel rooms, and certainly the amount that are proposed here.
If we could get an idea what that looks like as far as needed space, because I know there's some other spots that people have talked about potentially, hopefully coming available. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Swirsky.
I want to note that the Urban Design Historic Preservation Commission has approved this. And I guess I should comment that my wedding party was held. Just really grateful to the people who put this.
Rich, could you turn your mic on, please?
Yeah.
My bad.
That's okay.
I'm just really grateful to the people who put this together. It's good collaboration with the city, with the university. There are other stakeholders I'm leaving out, of course, the consultants that have worked on this. And before there was a Mr. Dorsey rebuilding the Browns, there was someone in Cleveland arranging big deals called Mr. Chema. It's good to see him still around and moving and shaking things a little bit.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to echo that, the developers have a very, very good reputation here, and this is, in fact, a great use for this particular property here. And that, this historic designation fits perfectly with regards to the actual building itself, and it's good to see that the planning commission approved as well. So with that, Mr. Milkovich has a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have more of a comment than a question. I just want to say that a lot of my youth was spent in this building. I used to work here, washed a lot of dishes.
Hope you weren't working at my wedding.
When I was going to high school, I started out to washing dishes, and I would work my way up to sous chef. This is a beautiful, beautiful historic building. There are a lot of great events that took place here, and I'm just so glad that we are going to bring new life into this building. And it's right down the street from the historic Hauer House. So when I was taking a look at this building inside, it just flashed back memories. I have a lot of lifelong friends that work there too. But I'm glad that we're going to take an event, look at this, and bring new life into it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments? Mr. Neal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment now that Mr. Milkovich mentioned that, because I've, like probably most people, have been able to participate as well as host a lot of events there. And I'm wondering, they may not know now, but I know that provided a nice venue for people to have special events. So hopefully that will still be considered to be made available to the community, because it's a beautiful venue for events. Thank you.
Very good. For the record, let it be known that the spokesperson was shaking their head yes. Ms. Amobian?
Just curious, how many units are being proposed? How many rooms?
Office zoning.
There are 73 rooms planned for the hotel space.
Okay.
Along with event space, you're recalling the existing ballroom space will be available. Restaurant will also be open for public use as well, and outdoor event space.
Okay, thank you. Will the city be doing anything in terms of any contributions to this project?
Not that I'm aware of at this time. Normally, we'll write letters of support for historic tax credit applications.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Further questions or comments? Very good. Hearing none, we'd like to invite you back this evening. 7 o'clock will be the next public hearing, and welcome you back. Thank you. In terms of the agenda, I'm going to request that we discuss the used car lot at 595 Vern Odom Boulevard. I understand the ward council representative, who happens to be our president, Somerville, would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple weeks ago, I did host a community meeting with the petitioner, along with pastors who churches are located right there in Vernon Odom, along with some other business individuals located in Vernon Odom, and some residents from the neighborhood. And we had a really great conversation, and we were able to find a middle ground, something that the petitioner could put on that lot that would benefit and help him, but also would be a benefit to the community. And so from that group is going to remain intact, and we're going to continue to plan and meet and really come up with a plan for that Vernon Odom corridor. So the petitioner understands that we will be voting down the used car lot, but we will be working with him on another project and plan on that particular lot.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Could we procedurally, Mr. Antonucci, just say that this has been withdrawn by the sponsor?
We would need to have that in writing from the sponsor, probably,
Okay.
or...
And we could probably get that.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I'll be happy to pen that letter and withdraw it. My name's probably on it as a sponsor, and I'll just withdraw it this evening formally, and we'll go from there. recognizing that there's more to go forward. It's just this particular one will not fit. So,
So you're recommending,
I'm going to recommend that I withdraw. I'm just going to withdraw it, which I can do as the sponsor. Procedurally, I can withdraw it. So we'll just report it out this evening as withdrawn by the sponsor. So, and if I remember correctly, no one is here from law, but I believe that permits them to bring it back in a different form. So I'm going to then recommend that we take, short of any questions or concerns, time on the balance, short of, where to go? Oh, number 5, to file number 5. That's the petition for that conditional use. Yes, Ms. Mobian?
I would just like to thank the president for doing that, because I think we were all torn by the fact that he purchased the land, and seemingly he was under the impression that he could do that. So as long as something is being worked out so he can have a business, I'm grateful that you did that.
Okay, very good. So then we'll file item number 5 shortly after that. And time on the balance, we'll now move on to the new list of legislation, which is 2, I believe. Yes, it isn't. Is it that? White Pond, oh, yes, it is. All right. Excuse me. Number 2 is accepting a dedication plat for White Pond Parkway.
Yes, Mr. Chair and committee members, this is actually accepting the dedication plat for this section of street on White Pond Parkway for the White Pond Office Park. This is accepting the dedication as a public right-of-way for that roadway.
Okay, very good. Mr. Beckert, anything else to add?
Essentially, we have built part of the road already back into the office park, and this plat will dedicate the remainder of the property that we need to extend the road. When we do extend the road, basically when the businesses come in, we'll be able to utilize some of the funds from the businesses coming in there and be able to build the rest of that roadway. So,
perfect. Thank you, sir. Further questions or comments reference to this exciting dedication plat that's already kind of built? Ms. Amobian.
Will there ever be, or could there be, an egress other than the same way in, the same way out, to go maybe behind that accounting firm, or what is that? It's called?
the railroad has restricted, there used to be access over the railroad at one time for the stone yard, but the railroad has restricted our access due to the speed of the trains. But going around the other way, where you would go south along the expressway, we've explored that with the developer of the other office buildings, and there's a possibility we can work together and do that in the future, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Consent agenda, okay?
Perfect.
All right.
So moved.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of consent signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it. Number 3, amending, supplementing ordinance 251-18, which authorized the sale of city-owned land located at 630, 642 Diagonal Road in order to promote new housing construction in keeping with the mayor's planning to grow Akron strategy for increasing the city's population, revitalizing the neighborhood.
All right.
Miss
Abraham Westcott.
Mr. Westcott.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. The legislation before you is an amendment to settle land for $1. Akron City Council approved the sale of the property for $206,000 to BR Nez Construction. Upon reviewing that cost, the developers requested to sell the property for $1. The sale will be in the name of their development company, Tri-Band Investments, so they can move forward in order to construct the 51 single-family homes. We're requesting the land to be sold for $1. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Westcott. Is there questions or comments? Ms. Mobian.
Who's selling what for $1 to whom?
The City of Akron owns 2 properties at 630 and 642 Diagonal Road, which was approved for $206, and we'll be selling it to Tri-Band Investment, which is part of BR Construction LLC, BR Construction, their same company. So we're just basically selling it to Tri-Band, one of their development arm.
For $1?
That's correct. That's what we're requesting.
How much did we pay for it?
We paid back in 2005, it was some homes on the property. We paid about $410,000 for the property.
That was with CDBG dollars, federal dollars, so the cost, local funds for the city was zero.
Well, those dollars could have been used for something else. So let's not make it sound as if, So the $206, what is that? I'm looking at this current. So they're gonna pay us $1 for the land.
Right, and essentially what happened, and Abe Westcott can help back me up on this, but as the developer started looking at how to develop the property and what the cost would be and what the homes could be sold for and the materials and the utilities and the roads, in order to make their numbers work, in order to make the construction of the homes feasible, they went back to us and requested, could we sell it for $1? And so what we did is we did look at the previous cost, as you mentioned. Yes, CDBG dollars are still dollars the city gets, but because we didn't put local funds in, because we want to make this project happen, and our alternative is to have the land sit vacant, and I think this will come up on any project that's proposed there. We felt like it's in the best interest of the neighborhood and the city and the project to sell it to them for $1 in order to make the project happen.
Are we putting any tips in this?
No.
Nothing else the city is putting in?
The developer's putting in the streets, in the infrastructure, and that was one of the things that when we got more detailed cost information, prompted them to come back and request this of us.
And the average home is going to cost?
They're going to start off at about $180,000.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Swirsky?
Just so the benefits, it is a little unusual, or it seems a little unusual, we're only charging $1, but the benefits to the public's interest are, I want to repeat that.
Yeah, the 51 new homes, new tax-paying households in the city of Akron. I think it helps with the stabilization of the neighborhood, investment in Ward 3. As you can probably imagine, when we first put the legislation together, we didn't want to sell this property for $1, which is why it was for $206,000. But sometimes when you get more detailed numbers from the developer and look at the cost estimates more, we do believe that this is probably what it'll take to make the project go forward. So we were willing to entertain that request and bring it before you.
So what we're going to get back is far beyond $410,000.
Yeah, I think Abraham has the total dollar investment of the project.
Yeah, we're looking at it'll be about $12 million when it's all. And as far as the investments, the value of the project include the improvements. I mean, in other words, the structure and also the improvement, the site improvements, the roads, all that. It'd be about $12 million.
Who's putting in the $12 million?
That will be between the private and the developer. In other words, the developer and the builder are going to be building the homes. Also, the developer will be putting in the streets.
And do we have some figures on, what will be the payback? You have 51 new homes paying taxes. Is that?
Well, we'll have the, new residents in the neighborhood that will be paying, purchasing things, paying sales tax, paying income tax if they work in the city. The homes would receive tax abatement if they apply for that, which I'm sure they will. But those homes will go back on the tax rolls at the end of the abatement period. And I think more importantly, it's a neighborhood that there's been a lot of disinvestment historically, and this is an opportunity to get a positive new project that I think can lead to other investment in the neighborhood. That's a lot of times how these projects work, that if people see new things being built, there might be more interest in our Copley Road Great Streets area, or the area around the zoo, or the area around the Perkins Mansion in general. So we do see it as an important catalyst for development in the neighborhood.
Mr. Neal?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand. So when we paid the $400 for it, who did we purchase it from?
We had two individual property owners at the time when we paid back in 2005. So we acquired it through, we acquired those two properties from private citizens.
Okay, and
as far as part of
None
the
of
high
them-
cross development project.
And none of them are part of either one of these companies here?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. None of them are part of either one of these companies here? The
No.
people that we paid 400 for?
Very good. Seems as though we're at a crossroads here in terms of our commitment with regards to increasing our population. $200,000 is a lot of money, for sure. However, though, if you look at that rate of return over time, with regards to 51 brand-new houses being constructed, the jobs that brings, put it in roads and everything else, coupled with that, it just seems as though that this is, it's not an easy decision, but it's one I think that we, that we maybe just need to take about a week to contemplate. But I think it would be prudent for the city to move in this direction. Ms. Amobian?
I agree with everything that's been said. Do we have any anticipated buyers? Anybody that's looking to move there from, because it sounds like you're talking about new residents. We're not talking about people moving across town or people from the neighborhood.
Yeah, I
We're
think
talking about-
there's definite interest, and when I say new, I really mean new to those homes. So I think one big part of planning to grow Akron, when we rolled out that strategy that this is a part of, is retaining residents. So in a lot of cases, all of you are probably familiar with friends and family that grew up in Akron, that wanted a new house and ended up moving out of the city because they wanted to get a newer home. And so I see a project like this as a prime example of where we can retain residents who already live in Akron, as well as, there may be people transplanted here or interested in coming back to the city. In some cases, I think that may have grown up in the neighborhood. I've heard that comment from residents before, that they moved out of the city and they would like to come back someday. So I think it's really, all three of those groups potentially are buyers.
Okay, I guess you have to take the risk.
This is, I got to tell you, if you look at all the investment over time, for a family to be almost across the street from the zoo, near the Lane Field, that's fairly close, a lot of investment there. Helen Arnold, CLC, this would be a great place to raise a family. And this is what we addressed last year with regards to Kenez. So I'm going to recommend time. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
President Somerville, sorry.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to speak in favor of this. This project means a whole lot to Ward 3 as we continue to bring development to the area. The area right there on Copley Road, diagonal really, is a very stable neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. If you ever drive down Diagonal, Rainbow, all in there, you don't even see any houses really up for sale. People really love their homes, and you don't see people moving in and out. And so I think that, if we're going to be really serious about increasing our population in Akron, sometimes we do have to give a little bit to make this project happen, but I think the benefits are going to outweigh tremendously the give of the $260,000. So thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Given that, how about if we, I'll be happy to withdraw my request for time and request consent agenda. And that way there, if anyone does have any questions or comments, we can always revisit this next week during committee. But with that, there's a second for consent agenda. All those in favor of consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. And again, we still have a week to be able to go forward and get questions answered. So with that, I'm going to recommend 3. I'm sorry. The new list, item number.
What's that?
Now, there's something else. Isn't there? Oh, okay. I apologize. We are adjourned. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
We have some more to, we've got a half hour. We at least have 15 minutes. there's some things, there is a question in connection to, I mean, I'm sure all of us read the paper this week. And there's been some questions that I've had and that have been asked that we haven't gotten answers on yet. And that is, I would like to get an understanding on our policy for the abatement, understanding what the lost revenue, I know we're talking about projected from their income tax sharing and them buying in the community. That's good. But I would like for us to get some hard numbers. I've been asking for a time on what is the property tax that's going to be lost that would have been gleaned from those places. Also, what can we do to look at easing the impact? Because our goal is to raise the overall property value in those areas. And in a lot of these areas, like where President Somerville was speaking of, you've had homeowners that have been there a long time and have retired. Raising their property value would adversely impact a lot of them. So I'd like for us, to take a look at that and see what the impact is going to be. Because in reading the article, one of the things that was kind of eye-opening, and I'm sure, again, everybody read it, was that they're projecting deficit spending starting the year 2022, where technically we've already started deficit spending. So...
Yeah, no, that's, Mr. Segedy, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what these are good questions. They are inherently difficult numbers to try to estimate, and just to be clear, we don't have a study that estimates those numbers, so that's analysis that we would have to try to put together. But I can respond to a couple things. The first is, we know how many houses were being built in Akron before the tax abatement program, and that number is real close to zero. So there were years, for numerous years in the past before the abatement program, we'd have on order of 10 or a dozen houses built in the entire city. So I think if the question is, what effect has the abatement program had on housing, I think it's huge. And so the number I always go back to is, 100% times zero is zero. If we've got virtually no homes being built, there's no property tax to lose. As far as the second part of the question, in a lot of cities, that has been a concern. If you get a lot of new construction and property values really go up, that neighboring residents' taxes go up. I could tell you, though, from the last valuation I remember seeing from Summit County, there was very little property value growth that I remember seeing. And so I think that would take some time to see if, properties may appreciate on their sales price, which we want. I get a lot of questions from homeowners in the city that say, what's the city going to do to make my property values go up? Because they feel stuck in their neighborhood and they don't want to have a house that doesn't appreciate. So I think sales price is going up. Assessed value from the county going up, as you indicated, if that goes up too much, that could be problematic for people on a fixed income. But to be honest, I think we're a ways away from seeing that happen. I think it is worth thinking about that. The other thing that I always mention about the abatement program is I can't wait for the day that I recommend to the mayor to get rid of it, because ideally we don't want to have to abate property taxes, but I think just like the discussion that we had on this particular piece of land and the fact that we had to give a little bit on the price, that's how I see the abatement program. It's an incentive that is there to get us over the hump until we can start to get a lot of construction again. So, and then the final thing I would say, and I made this case, I think, when we announced the program and asked for council's consideration, was these homes will eventually come back on the tax rolls, and they will, then they will start paying property taxes in the longer run. But I think even in the short run, getting new residents in the city that are investing in the city, buying things, et cetera, those are numbers that are hard to calculate, but I think they're real benefits.
Okay, very good. Let's, just one last brief, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Just brief.
I mean, technically, the next meeting isn't until 2 o'clock, and these are
Well,
discussions
if you
that
guys
we've
want,
had.
maybe what we could do is you guys can talk
No,
individually.
But you know what, but I think it's
And,
important, excuse me, sir, I think it is important to have this documented, as we talked before, so we can document our progress. This is my concern.
You mentioned you're willing to do it.
This is my concern. Mr. Segedy said it's hard to get these numbers. But these are numbers, and we've said this before, when someone comes in and wants to build in an area or construct something, they have to have a plan showing that they can meet whatever our zoning requirements are, our specs. We need to know how this is going to impact us, because I agree, the abatement program is good, but the one thing we talked about, maybe we need to stair-step the abatement program, because of the impact, potential impact that it could have on communities. I would just like to, without having any numbers, we don't know if we're achieving our goal. We don't know how it's impacting the communities around there. So, I mean, I agree, we need to,
We're probably not going to know for a couple of years, because the thing of it is we just passed it last year, I believe.
I don't think I mean, my opinion is I don't think we can know until we start to see
yeah.
homes built and see what happens. And then I think that'll guide us on maybe some policy recommendations.
what I like to do is see, if we don't have tools for us to develop tools so that we can measure how it impacts, because, I mean, you mentioned property tax. I mean, I think everybody that owns property in Akron knows as soon as we passed the 0.25% tax increase, the county did an aerial appraisal of most people's property, and everybody's property taxes went up just through that aerial appraisal. So if we're, you know, we have to understand, and we've talked about this before, how everything that we do impacts our constituents.
I would disagree, knowing a little bit about that. They don't do an aerial appraisal.
Oh, yes, they
Just
do,
say
sir.
that they, that wasn't an appraisal. What they're doing is they're trying to discover if there was anything built without permits. That's what that's all
No,
about.
that was-
And but what they do is whenever they calibrate the values, they calibrate them based on real sales and on sales analysis. They don't just fly over and say they're going to increase the values. There's a lot more that goes into that than just a flyby. Like I said, we're kind of drifting off.
But Mr. Chairman, to that point, I actually called the county when I got all my different tax records and asked, and they told me they did an aerial appraisal of the area. They flew over the area, did an aerial appraisal, and increased everybody's property taxes.
But it's the basis though, it's not just based on flying over, the basis is driven by market.
I'm sure there's
By the
different.
market.
I'm sure there's different things that they use, but
Yeah,
what I
we're
want to share
drifting
with
off
you is
of
that.
planning stuff, so I would like a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. This is all I would ask, is that if we can have a target date when we can get an idea of what the ramifications would look like. Because combining this, if I may, combining this with looking at, since when we abate a property or when we raise taxes on folks aren't independent of each other, one of the things I'd like to see us look at is when we go into an area, and because when we develop, that means more roads. We know we're challenged keeping the roads that we have. Not knocking it, just wanting us to understand that, is that with the 0.25% tax increase we just raised on folks, everybody's paying through their taxes. Maybe one way we can help in some of these communities in developing is if people are already paying for the improvements through their income taxes, then we turn around and we assess their property when we go in there and we approve it. If we could start looking at if we could do something else with that assessment to approve the other amenities in that area. I'm saying we never have these discussions about how.
We're really drifting off now.
Well,
Yeah.
no, you say that we're drifting off, but we have no understanding of the policies that we implement, long-term or short-term, how they
Yeah, I don't want
impact
to
our
debate.
constituents.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Yeah, Mr. Neal, I think you raised some good issues. I think the planning department has said that they would get you as much information as they could, but it may be premature for any kind of long-term analysis of it. So I do feel a bit like we're kind of repeating and drifting, but I think we should look into those issues, but not right this moment at this committee meeting. So I'm going to support Mr. Kamer's
I'm glad you brought it up, but
Well, thank you. All I would like to do is have a target date of when we get the information, because I know we've
Well,
been
that's
asking
going to be, he's going to have to work with his staff on that,
so,
right?
You want to call for a vote on
Yeah,
adjournment?
all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed?